Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and we are kind of in the middle of nowhere, but I'm checking out a brand new used LEGO store. This is Brickheadz in Lancaster, Philadelphia. Let's go in and take a look. So the first thing you see when entering the Brickheadz shop is this awesome UFO display from 1999. It's really rare to see a store display this intact and fully functioning around these days, and I found that was one of the coolest parts about this shop. Now, of course, one of the most impressive things about this store was just how many different sets they were able to pack in here. Of course, you have these standard Build-A-Minifig tables and a whole host of Bionicles, which actually are some of their best-selling products. Just look at how many different sets they have from the entire line of Bionicle here, and that's just one small part of the store. They truly have a pretty great diverse collection of different LEGO sets from all sorts of LEGO themes, and it was a really great place to essentially just go treasure hunting because I never really knew what I was going to find as I looked on each shelf. That being said, everything was pretty well organized. You can see that everything was pretty much grouped by theme, like some spy themes, underwater themes. Of course, you got Star Wars, Bionicle, agents, and whatnot. Everything was kind of categorized in its own section, which I found to be really nice. And they had a good mix between boxed sets and built sets already. Like you can see on this shelf here, they have a ton of different sets that are already pre-built that they just have on display, so you can take a look at what some of the sets look like fully built. They had some really classic hidden gems like some M-Tron stuff in the back there, as well as a whole host of both old and modern LEGO sets. It was truly just a fantastic experience to walk around the store and just see what kinds of stuff they had. Just look at all of these different Bionicle canisters, some sealed and some used, and different Bionicle sets that are fully in the boxes. The selection was truly fantastic, and the prices were also fairly comparable to Bricklink itself. In fact, some of them were the cheapest US Bricklink listings ever, which was very nice to see because it's always kind of hit or miss with used LEGO stores when you're looking at prices. Sometimes other LEGO stores really jack up the prices to crazy rates, but for this one the prices were pretty competitive with Bricklink, especially after you counter in shipping, and also the fact that many of these sets they had on sale here just simply are not even sold in the US. Most of them are only sold in Europe or Asia, which makes them extra special. Even just looking at this, they have a whole line of vintage sets and other kind of random bizarre sets here and there, which you will see throughout my hauls because I always tend to focus on collecting the strangest things that I can find from LEGO stores, and this was no different. They even had some ancient vintage store displays like this awesome Technic store display, and of course, as you can see here, a whole host of large LEGO sets that were already pre-built, and some rare gems like that Metroliner passenger car I'm really regretting not picking up. Moving on to down here, you can see some more shots of many of the different sets they have just on display. Truly a fantastic collection and one of the most diverse ranges of used LEGO sets that I could find in total. But now it's about time to kind of start wrapping up this video, and I thought what better way than to actually show off this fantastic UFO store display. Not only does it fully light up, but it also has full sound effects and even plays the LEGO Maniac theme song. Let's check out a little bit here.
LEGO Maniac building. So no matter where your LEGO adventures take you, they
Alright, so here we have with this haul. Take it out of the store and we'll unbox it all when we get back. And of course, the final stage of this video is to showcase the massive haul I got from the Brickheadz shop. There's a ton of really rare stuff here, so let's jump right in. Alright, so here we have some of my haul from the Brickheadz shop. Let's dive in and take a look at each of these. First off, we have a LEGO Snap set. So if you don't know, Snap was a very interesting line of building toys that LEGO put out. It was a very unorthodox design, somewhat compatible with LEGO Technic, but really not a successful product line, which is why I had to pick this one up. Kind of a rare oddity to see one of these fully in the original box as well, so definitely we'll be checking this out and unboxing it later on. Next up, we have some of the Bionicle system sets I did not own yet. Specifically, we have one of the 2007 ones, as well as the Race for the Mask of Life set for 2006. And also in the box are the pieces to the lava chamber gate. I will be washing this and rebuilding it very shortly. Moving on, we have some of the more obscure LEGO Sports hockey sets. They actually did a line of construction or buildable figure hockey stuff for LEGO Sports, which I didn't actually own many of these figures beforehand, so I'm interested in opening these to check them out. Moving on from that, we have one of the classic LEGO Technic submarine sets. It's a pretty interesting build. You can actually see they had this featured on the store display inside the store, so that's why I had to pick it up, because I thought the build was pretty interesting. Moving on, we have the Rock Raiders headquarters. Now, I actually do own this set, but it's not actually fully built at my house, so I figured why not just buy a second copy so I could have the full set with me, rather than having to find all of the pieces loose in my collection. It's one of the classic LEGO Underground themes, and I'm really excited to crack this one open and build it. The box is also in really fantastic condition. Moving on, we have another great condition box, the LEGO System Fright Knights Witch's Manor. Right here you can see it folds open, you can see the dragon and the knight as well, with a bit of a story background description for the set itself. I really do love the artwork used on boxes of this time, so this is certainly going to be a box I am keeping. With that, there's just a few other things from the store, like one of the Angry Birds sets I did not own yet, as well as the LEGO Simpsons Kwik-E-Mart, which I actually will be fully taking apart to wash, but here it is fully built right now. So without further ado, let's dive in and take a look at each of these sets. Alright, so here we have the first of two sports hockey-related theme sets I got. It was a very strange time in LEGO's history when they were trying to integrate Construction and Bionicle-like characters into pretty much every theme they were putting out, from Knight's Kingdom to Galador and, of course, sports. So, if you don't own these figures already, you can see that they actually do reuse quite a lot of Bionicle pieces. Remove the mask here, and it's literally just using a Tohunga head, which is pretty interesting to see. The mask connection is exactly the same as Bionicle mask connections, and it does of course reuse recolors of Borak elements on these sides here in different colors to actually form the shaping of the figure. Now, of course, some of these elements would go on to be used in official Bionicle sets, like the feet elements here, which were developed for the hockey line, but eventually were recasted in gold for Brutaka. Now, each of the hockey figures has a pretty fun function. Pressing down on the head allows you to actually move the puck like so. A lot of them are just on this side-to-side motion, but we'll be taking a look at a slightly different motion for some of the other ones later on in this video. Now, this one was a slightly larger set, so it does come with the most bare-bones goal you could possibly have. This doesn't even have a net or anything. It's just the most standard Technic frame of a goal, but it does its purpose. What's more interesting, though, is that it comes with this contraption. So this is actually meant to feed the pucks to the player. It is a wind-up gear function, so actually if you wind it up here, you'll notice that the pucks can actually be fed out like so. Once we get that one out, it doesn't really work all too well, because sometimes they get stuck and then it stops turning, but if we manage to wind this up a lot, then we can just kind of set it to keep on going. So let me feed these back in here. And you can have him hit the pucks like so. So essentially the way it's supposed to work, which doesn't work out too well, it's kind of an over-engineered contraption for basically just something that spins this gear here to feed the pucks, but this is essentially how it works. You've got the pucks like so. Let's just put one of them here. You got your goal here, and yay, you almost scored a goal. As you can see, it's a little finicky, and it really depends on how hard you hit it, but I can imagine this being fun with friends. Of course, you do run the issue of what I just did and having the pucks go through the goal, but that's a whole other problem. All in all, this is a pretty fun set, a very experimental sub-theme of LEGO hockey. Definitely not one that was probably very popular, but I'm sure it did have its fans, and it's probably time to look at the next set now. Alright, so this next hockey theme set here actually features two different figures with different functions. As you can see, pressing down on their heads actually has the puck go up and down. Instead of side to side, back and forth, it kind of has them flick it upwards. The idea behind this is that you're supposed to actually be able to flick one of the pucks above the staff of the other character. And again, I don't know too much about hockey or LEGO hockey, so not really sure what the official terminology for any of this stuff is, but you're supposed to flick the puck upwards and be able to do that. Does it work? Kind of. You really have to get lined up and flick it, but even then it doesn't really move it all too much. I'm going to try to push it down right here, and it just really kind of flips it over. So they're not very useful. I think the other function was a lot better thought out in terms of having it move side to side. Here, these are more maybe could be used for just passes or goalies or whatnot. And speaking of the goals, you'll notice it is the exact same build as the previous set, except this time the goals actually had a full-on net, which is actually pretty nice to see because of course it will stop the pucks from going past the goal. These actually do look like pretty realistic and fairly decent goals, which is actually surprising to me. I wasn't expecting to see the net there. Now again, these feature some recolors for Bionicle pieces. You can see we got some Parok shields in black, you have some of the Nuva armor in orange, and of course you have the Tohunga heads underneath the face masks like so. What's also kind of interesting about this is that you may notice that they are wearing the livery of actual existing sports teams. I do not know too much again about hockey teams, so I could not be able to tell you what exactly these teams are. I mean, this one obviously says Dallas Stars. I don't know what this one is, but it did actually come with these stickers for the regular NHL themed, the generic Lego themed stuff, which is actually pretty interesting to see here. So we have two different options for these stickers on their chests if you actually want to make them represent certain themes, which is a pretty cool idea. Now the function is definitely not the best, as you can see here. Doesn't really move the puck too much, but I guess it's the thought that counts, and if you have a ton of these, I can imagine it being fun in an arena-style play mode. But with that, we can move on to our next set. Now this right here is one of the classic LEGO Technic submarines, and this is a really interesting set, both in terms of the pieces, the functions, and the way the set was even built in total. Of course, this came from an era when Technic was still using the standard bricks, so you've got a very studded surface, but the set also includes a ton of interesting functions that honestly were new to me, and I'd never experienced them before. So I'm going to get the simplest stuff out of the way first. Turning a gear on the back here lifts open the very simple cockpit, and you can actually remove this separate detachable craft for the diver here. You'll notice it's using the Technic large posable figure, but what's really cool is that they even developed a little goggles piece for him. So this goggles element can be fully removed if you want to take it off his face here. It's just its own little element, never experienced this before, and you kind of snap it on around his ears and there you go. It's just using a flex tube for the oxygen tank here. His hands just clip right onto the Technic pins right here, and he even has an oxygen tank on his back, which again is specially molded for this figure. In the back of the sub, you'll notice that you can actually remove this element right here, which is a drill piece, if you actually want to attach this to the front so you can actually have some sort of a drill on the front of his craft to do some underwater mining. So it's cool that they included this sort of thing on the back of the sub here. And moving on to the side, it actually encourages you to use this piece right here to actually place his goggles and his air tank when he's not actually using this little submersible, but I figured they look kind of cool on him, so I just left it on. Of course, he does have flippers too, should he intend to actually leave the submersible and dive on his own, which is a really cool thing. So first off, you'll notice that this is a Technic set that actually includes a lot of different accessories and stuff for the figure, which is pretty rare for LEGO Technic. But that is not the coolest thing, because you may notice that there is a large air tank in the center. This is not just for display, this is actually a working airtight air tank, and this is actually meant for the different hydraulics. How this works is that you press down on the pump here, you can pump air into the air tank, and you've got this little lever here that you can actually choose to divert air either to this end or this end. What each of them do is one of them will open the claw and one of them will close it and bring it towards the diver. So let's say I want to pick up this barrel here. I'm going to move the submarine up, and I've already pumped a ton of air into the air tank. It's probably pretty full, and I just need to turn the lever there, and it automatically picks it up almost as if it was motorized or something like that, and it does pick it up very well. Now, of course, after I pump in a little bit more air into the tank, you can see when I flip it the other way, it then drops it, which is really cool, and this is a function that works really well. And if you pump in enough air, you can probably even do another pickup without actually having to pump in more. So if I toggle it this way again, you can see it has barely enough air, but then it starts to sink down. So this is truly a hydraulic system, which is something that's really interesting to me. I personally have not experienced many working hydraulic systems in LEGO before, so this definitely was a new feature to me and something that I actually think worked out pretty well and was surprisingly well functioning for its time. Sometimes the functions for Technic stuff or just LEGO stuff in general during this era are a little hit or miss, but this one worked pretty perfectly, and I can see why this set was basically the flagship set that they used to advertise LEGO Technic for this particular year, because this just works out really well and is still very identifiable as a submarine. It's honestly probably one of my favorite pickups from that store. It's just something that works really well. But now we can probably move on to the next set. Speaking of underwater themed LEGO sets, this set right here was one of the few LEGO Bionicle system sets I did not previously own. And now after this trip, I do own all of the Bionicle system sets. They just happen to have the 3 I was missing. But starting off with this build here, it is some sort of an aquatic monster for the Baraki. You can see Takedox and Kalma are piloting it inside here, and it is a very simple build, but honestly it's pretty bulked up and pretty menacing. I want to get some of the side stuff out of the way first though. Funnily enough, the value of this set is pretty inflated because of one piece, this particular dish in this color of transparent light blue. It really was only in this set and I think a couple of others, so this piece is actually really rare, and most of the listings for the set on Bricklink just exclude this piece for a deep discount. Thankfully I got one that had it, so I do have the full jellyfish with this particular color of the dish right here. Now these pieces are actually glow in the dark on the bottom, which is pretty cool to see. And of course we can then move on to the next part here, which is some sort of a, I would assume, leftover budget piece thing. It's kind of the most simple of platforms featuring a squid launcher in the system sets. You can move around the squid launcher and kind of move the platform around, but this is just something super simple and honestly is not the best build, as you can see. Moving here, this is actually pretty interesting. It's some sort of a submersible dive craft for the Toa Mari. You can see Toa Mari Huki is inside there, the minifigure version of him. And this just comes together like so. It's using some pieces that actually were designed for a ton of other sets around this era, cropping up in City and Technic and whatnot, but the transparent blue color and strange nature of this makes it feel really otherworldly, and I actually kind of like the look and feel of this little mini escape craft. But of course, moving on to the main attraction here, this is some sort of a crawler or some sort of underwater creature for the Baraki. Now, of course, you can move around the legs, which are just very simple. The Vaki staffs mounted on the ends of the Toamata limbs here. What's interesting is that it actually recolors the Visorak claw or tooth pieces in white, which is a nice recolor to get. I certainly was not expecting to see these in white. And it does have an interestingly shaped mouth here, grasping onto some sort of a Zammer sphere. So it is pretty interesting. A very unorthodox vehicle for a LEGO set. It is very simple in the way it's built up, but it is pretty menacing, and I actually do kind of like the look of this. It's one of my favorite Bionicle system sets in general, just because of how simple the concept is and how well put together the build is in relative terms compared to many of the other builds. But of course, it's nothing compared to the Toa Terrain Crawler, which a battle between this and the Terrain Crawler would be pretty cool to see. But now we can probably move on from this to our next few Bionicle system sets, so let's go. Okay, so here we have one of the larger Bionicle 2006 playsets. This is the Lava Chamber Gate. It actually featured a cannon roll in the Bionicle storyline. You can see this build in some of the comics, and it does have a few features packed throughout that actually make this a pretty action-packed set. So first of all, I've just kind of placed them on here, but they have a pretty unique design for some sort of a silver lava surfboard with a full-on Zammer sphere launcher mounted on it. I felt like Nuparu, the engineer, was the guy who would have created something like this, so I placed him on the surfboard like so. It's really just a Zammer sphere mounted on a LEGO surfboard piece. Kind of a crazy design, but honestly it kind of works. And it does sort of balance and not falling over if you do have the figure positioned correctly. So these are pretty fun to play with, a little bit wobbly, but you get the idea. Of course, the Paraka have one as well. Oh, there go the Zammer spheres, but the Paraka have one as well, and who better to pilot it than their leader, Zaktan. Moving aside from the surfboards, though, and kind of looking at the main attraction here, one thing I do like are the unique parts usages of different pieces across the top. It's a little hard to see here, but they have a Zammer sphere catapult, and this catapult is using the Kanohi Road, or the Mask of Truth. Now these are not actually connected, so I can really clearly show you it here. It's just using the Axon mask piece right here as a catapult, which actually works out really well. And they took advantage of the bowl-like shape of it to actually serve a pretty cool purpose in the set, which is something I really do like. Of course, you can see another Kanohi Road in the center here as some sort of a figurehead of the bridge itself, which is pretty nice that they were including the Titan masks in double quantities in this Bionicle system sets. Now over here, you may be wondering what exactly this whole contraption is. Well, pulling this lever right here causes the bars to go down in case you want to trap someone inside. And if you want to reset it, you just pull this up, lifts the bar up, push this back in, and there you go. You've got your bars reset. The same exact feature happens the same way on this side as well, as you can see. Pull it back up here, put this back into lock, and there you go. Very, very simple function, very standard, and also not really the best put together function. It's really finicky, and you can kind of cause it to break apart because of how fragile it is, but it does its job. And speaking of different functions, we actually have some different functions up here based on whether or not you hit these points. So I'm going to get these guys out of the way first, but you may notice that as soon as I press this inwards, it causes the bridge to collapse. And now that didn't actually fully collapse because one of the minifigs is caught on it, but the idea is that this whole thing just falls down. And let me try to do it on the Paraka side now that I don't have this other side in the way. I just kind of push this in, and the whole bridge collapses. So pretty fun play feature, a little bit chaotic, but really the only thing attaching the bridge elements is just this one Technic bit right here, and then you kind of just have to let it dangle and rest on this particular platform here. A bit of a strange way to connect things. Again, not necessarily something that would be actually flying today by LEGO's build standards and playability standards of today, but it's definitely interesting to see how they were kind of experimenting with different play features during this time. And so that basically is all there is to see about this particular set. It's a very simple set in concept and design. It's just a big bridge battle, and the bridge will collapse when you pull different things. It's a simple concept, and I think it works out fairly well for the Bionicle system line of playsets. So with that, we can probably move on from this set and take a look at our next one on this list. Okay, so here we have the final Bionicle set. This is a non-canon set called Race for the Mask of Life, featuring two catamaran-style builds as the Toa and Paraka race towards the Mask of Life across the lava on Voya Nui. A very strange concept and not something that ever appeared in the story, but it's still interesting to see exactly what's going on here. So I want to get the tower out of the way first, so bringing that to the front here and kind of pivoting this upwards, you can see that it's a very simple tower. I like that they use the Brutaka masked piece, the Olmec here, because it's always cool to get recolors of different things here and there. Now this has a few very simple functions. You pull this out and the axe swings downwards, so again, super simple, but it does work out pretty well. And on the back here, you may notice some rubber band-like designs. So what's interesting is that once you push this in, then the bars go up, and this spike goes upwards as well. You have to push it back down, and then push the mask back this way to lock the bars in place. It uses the Technic bars as jail pieces or gatehouse pieces, very similarly to how the other set used them, which is pretty interesting because I'm guessing this was designed by Bionicle designers trying to make a system set, and of course they're very familiar with working with Technic functions like these, so they actually were able to work it into some sort of a system build. But of course the tower is not the main attraction of the set. Instead, that's the two vehicles here. So you've got one for the Paraka and one for the Toa. The Paraka here have a fun function where you can move around a lever on the back to cause the arms to actually open and close or swing back and forth on the front of the vehicle here. Super simple function, just using beams and lift arms, but it works out fairly well. And you actually have a gear on the back here that you can use to control the rotation of the Zammersphere launcher on the front, which is cool because you can pretend you're using it for steering or something, with the Brutaka sword elements being used as some sort of sail pieces. This does use a ton of just random Bionicle pieces slapped on. I'm honestly not too impressed with how this is built. It's very, very blocky, especially around the back. You'll notice it's just one large square. It doesn't really have any rounding to it or whatnot, but I guess for Bionicle designers trying to make a system set, it's not bad. And then we can probably move on to the Toa set right here. So this is the Toa Catamaran. It is much more uniform in its design, featuring dual Zammer launchers. I think I actually kind of like this design better than the Paraka one because at least this is doing something a little bit different with the shaping here. And what's cool is that you can twist this gear to actually elevate the Toa and open up the front of the craft, which really radically changes the shape of this vehicle, and you can really just cause it to move around in different positions just based on how the gear function works. So it's a pretty cool function to have, very simple one, but I do actually like how it works, and you can actually make this look like different things based on the elevation of the center platform here. Other than that though, it's just basically a standard catamaran build, which is nothing to complain about. I think this is one of probably the stronger Bionicle system sets that came out around 2006 because it's a very action-packed set. And yes, before you mention it, this is very, very similar to a Ninjago set we got very recently, which is, again, kind of a funny coincidence because Bionicle is kind of the precursor to Ninjago in terms of having a long-form story, elemental heroes, and a whole lore to itself. A random license set that I was in no way interested in when it first came out is this set from the Angry Birds movie. I've come to appreciate random LEGO licenses over the years, so I figured why not pick one up because I never got this when it first came out. It's a very simple but charming design of the little egg treehouse here, some sort of house build featuring some fun stickers and detailing on the inside, but it is just kind of a standard build. I just thought it was kind of a cute thing to have on the shelf, and this does come with a piggy-themed motorcycle as well, for whatever reason featuring some balloons in the back. I guess this guy just likes to party. Not too much I can say about this one. The minifigures or figure designs for this particular theme are pretty interesting. Nothing we've really seen in LEGO before unless you count stuff like the Minions and whatnot, so it's just always cool to find some weird licensed LEGO stuff that doesn't really fit in or conform to standard LEGO themes or sets nowadays. I do hope that LEGO will continue to go after weird licenses like these so I could experience random other figures like so. So here you have it. Not much I can say about this one other than it's just one of the Angry Birds movie sets. Now this right here is the massive LEGO Simpsons Kwik-E-Mart set. Surprisingly enough, I did not own this. Unfortunately, I missed out on it when it first came out, so I figured why not actually take the opportunity when I could to get this set that I've actually wanted for quite a long time but never actually owned before. Now this is a very, very detailed set. It may not look like it from the outside, but everything fully opens up, and this has a very, very detailed interior, which is really, really nice to see. There's a lot of fascinating detail built into here. Would highly recommend going through the building experience for this because this was a really cool set to put together. If I remove some of the card seal, you'll see just the amount of detail at this store right here. LEGO hasn't really done a grocery store or anything like this in the past before, so it's really interesting to see just how many printed elements are featured here, all references to the TV show, of course. And even tilting this upwards, you'll see even more detail packed within this shop, which is really cool to see. Very realistic and fully enclosed store, which is probably one of the most unique LEGO builds for a licensed theme. I wish that LEGO would continue doing stuff more like this because it is a really cool build. Doesn't look too crazy on the outside, but the inside is packed with a ton of detail, and all in all, it's a fantastically detailed LEGO set. Would highly recommend for the building experience and the build process, and that's pretty much all I have to say. Next up here, we have one of the classic LEGO Fright Knights sets. This is the Witch's Magic Manor. You can see that this is actually part of the larger Fright Knights ensemble, except the set is fully focused around the witch character. She has a bit of a flyer here, a very whimsical thing with bat wings that can swirl around like so. Just a very strange design that LEGO came up with during this era of LEGO Castle. And this does actually have a few features if we kind of move away the dragon here, which is a nice classic LEGO dragon. Always good to get this piece in sets. You'll notice that we've got one of the poor forest men in the center there, right there. Releasing this here allows a rock to fall on him, but don't worry, he's alright because the rock is hollow, so he's just kind of tucked away inside there and you can lock it like so. Very simple but fun function here, and honestly there isn't really too much else to this build. You've got some designs on the side here that flip around to reveal a skeleton, very classic LEGO play feature here, and of course a little hideaway for the witch herself in this little alcove here. But beyond that, this is just a very simple set. Of course, it's a pretty expensive one nowadays just because it is a vintage castle set, but there isn't too much going on, just a classic LEGO castle build. Now this set right here is the LEGO Rock Raiders headquarters. Now I actually did already own this set, but it was broken apart in my collection. I was trying to locate the pieces for it, but eventually just figured why not just buy a second one and use the base plate for some other LEGO stuff for my own purposes. So this is a really fantastic vintage Lego set. It is a very similar build to some of the castle sets of its time because of course it uses a similar base plate, but the detailing is definitely very distinct for the underground theme, and this does actually have quite a few different features to it. Now, first of all, you have this sort of crane here, which is meant to actually dump rocks into the quarry in the center there. The way it works is if I get this little car out of the way, let's just drive that backwards out here. Very simple car, or maybe you could even use it to load backwards. So if you want to have this car facing backwards, you have a bit of a place here to load rocks. Let me just take this rock here, and you push it along, and there it goes. The rock falls down. It's supposed to technically fall into here, but you get the idea. And you push this back up, car brings it out, and that's how the function works. So it's a pretty fun function. You've got all sorts of different stuff here to actually analyze the different rock samples. So if you look on this area right here, you've got a little robotic arm that's maybe a laser drill that's drilling into the rock, and you also have this crane to place the rock downwards onto this particular platform here, just based on how you have it hoisted up. Moving on to this side, this is actually a light up piece. It's a little hard to see right now, but pressing the button here causes a light to shine out of the front of this piece right here. It was a piece that was used in almost every single Rock Raider set, so if you own one of the Rock Raider sets, you probably have this. And finally, there's just a little recharging station for a flyer here. One thing I really do like about the Rock Raider sets is that it really feels like it can come alive with different modules. Maybe this is just because I was a fan of the original Rock Raiders video game, but you had bases just like this where you built up different modules in the game, and they all did different things, which is also why I really like playing with the sets like this, and why I was okay with owning two of the set, because I could use the other base plate as, say, an expansion to this main set. You've got little flyers that deploy from different bases here. You've got analysis stations, cranes, lasers, a big central dumping station right here, all sorts of just really fun functions across this entire set. And of course, you have one of the big boy rock monsters here who actually can hold crystals and maybe even throw minifigures. So what's not to like about this classic Rock Raider set? Definitely has a very different design philosophy than LEGO has today, where they focused on making the largest thing possible with the least amount of pieces possible, which is why you've got big base plate here, large kind of crane pieces to elevate the platforms here, but all in all, it ends up being a very impressive set and very large because of all the effort that's put into actually making this scene built up. But with that, let's now move on to our final set from this haul. So last and arguably least here is LEGO Snap. So for those of you who don't know, LEGO Snap was LEGO's attempt to copy some competitor brands back in the 80s and 90s when they really weren't doing too well financially, and because of this attempt to copy their competitors, the Snap line was created, which is very similar to some other brands out there. You know what I'm talking about. So this features an entirely new system for building that I personally had not experienced before and just wanted to experience myself. It's actually what made me go into the store. I was looking at recent photos that the store posted online. I saw the Snap box for the low price of $20, and I said, you know what, I have to own that. So I went into the store to specifically look for this. Thankfully, it was still in stock. I was actually told that they were very glad that I took it off their hands because not very many people were too interested in the LEGO Snap set. Except for me, because I like to collect weird LEGO stuff, and that's what this is for. So the instruction manual was very interesting because, first of all, it included images of the sets, like literal pictures of the set's build process, and this main model wasn't even in the instructions until the very end, or near the end, because they had a ton of other building ideas on what you could do with the pieces. It was really clear to me that they intended this to be kind of an all-in-one building system, and you could just build a ton of different stuff with it, which is admirable for a LEGO set. I guess that's kind of what LEGO's all about, but I don't necessarily know how good the shaping worked out on this. Of course, because of its nature, it's very hollow and not necessarily in a good way like LEGO Technic has its own style. This just feels like the outline or structure internals of a jet. Now, the name of the set is Dino Jet, and you may be wondering, why is it named Dino Jet? Well, I will show you, because this has a magical transformation feature. Move these down like so, and the nice thing about Snap is that the connectors here actually allow you to move these in any which way. You can rotate these down here. It sits up like this. The head, if I can get the camera up there, rotates downwards, and zooming out and backing up, this is now a ferocious dinosaur. Kind of. So, yeah, this is what they meant by Dino Jet. I guess I can kind of see it. This kind of looks like the head to a pterodactyl or a raptor or something. These, I guess, could be construed as arms, and I guess what they wanted you to think was that this is the tail here and these are the legs. I guess from the side profile, if you ignore the wheels, I can actually kind of see it. You can see the arms here, head here, and the feet here, but honestly, it's kind of a stretch. And it's very clearly just supposed to be a jet that's kind of tilted upwards. It's very obvious, of course, when I furl these back out, put it down flat, and raise it up, that this is first and foremost a jet. But I admire the transformation feature. It's not often that they actually go through the effort of trying to do something like that in a set's main model, so I do like it, although of course I will be displaying this in jet form. Now, LEGO Snap is definitely a theme that deserves a second look for its own video all on its own. I may actually be picking up a few more of these to put out a bizarre or weird LEGO review of these, kind of in a similar vein to some other strange LEGO items I've picked up. There actually were a couple of extra pieces that were not used in this build that I've just kind of thrown onto here, but these actually are probably the most interesting to me, particularly because of the way that they suggest that you can actually hook up Technic stuff to this securely. You've got this element right here, which I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with this, but it seems like some sort of a way to connect Technic elements to it. And of course, you have this right here, which actually is a Snap to Technic axle connector. Now, what I'm personally really curious to see is that if anyone has attempted to build mocks out of these pieces, out of the Snap pieces, I personally would love to see that, because this is just such a wacky and weird building system. I think it deserves a little bit more attention in the LEGO mocking sphere to see if people can actually make useful things out of these pieces. But with this summed up, we've taken a look at the massive haul from the Brickheadz shop. Again, would highly recommend going over and visiting. They have such a wide collection of items, and while I got most of these sets I did not own already, there still are a ton of stuff that I actually didn't own and I was hoping to pick up the next time I go. So I certainly will be making a trip back, and I hope to see you there next time. With that, thank you all so much for tuning into Duck Bricks. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Brickheadz shop and a large look at the haul I got from the shop. Thank you all for tuning in so much to Duck Bricks, and stay tuned for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thank you so much, and bye-bye for now.